Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, loin streamer. Also, you may have heard, I am a muscle mama. Mommy. Sometimes. And today, I am also the love police. Why? Well, you know. Today is LMIAY, and that is the monthly prompt writing contest here on the channel. If you're new around here, every month on the first Monday of the month, I host this smorgasbord of creativity, this barbecue of brilliance, the LMIAY, which is where I give you guys a prompt, and it can come from all sorts of places. It can even come from conversation with many of you, sometimes even from the loin stream itself or the chat during video game playing. Either way, it comes from discussion, inspiration, what have you. I present it to you. I pray that you have a good time, that you just play with whatever, you experiment, you do whatever regarding the prompt. And then the first Monday video, we read some together and have a great time. It's always a great time. Mangoes is still my favorite. And that is what we're doing today. The final LMIAY of 2024. And has it been a year for LMIAYs? Today's LMIAY is also this gets into why I am the love police, because today it is an anti-romance story where someone gets the idea that they have a real connection with somebody and that somebody likes them, and it turns out that they were completely mistaken. So like, you were not loved. It did not happen. Not happen like that. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Number one way to be featured is through what we're doing here today, LMIAY, and the prompt for January is already available. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit your first chapter and your cover page to the feature, they'll be read here on the channel at a random interval to hopefully help more readers find your work if your pickle tickles theirs in a completely respectful way. The third way, the third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, judge me for my long-term traumatic issues, you can find my books at any of your favorite places to get books, including your local library upon request. Join the Discord. It's a pretty okay place. Like last time I said it was nice, I had a bunch of people being like, I'm gonna prove you freaking wrong. So here we are. And that said, let's get into the stories. The first story up is by Mae Tanner. Adrath opened his eyes. The room where he lay was dimly lit. He sat up. Wherever he wasn't in the keep. The room had wooden walls. You're awake. How do you feel? He turned. The woman who'd spoken was a stranger, with pale skin, hazel eyes, and reddish-brown hair done up in smooth braids. She sat in a chair by a small sewing table. The light source was a hooded light globe on the table. The room had no windows. What is this place, and how did I get here? She smiled at him. The smile didn't touch her eyes. You don't need to worry about that. He scowled at her. I think I do. The smile slipped. This is a homestead. You were ill when you were brought here. That's all that I can tell you. She rose from her seat, setting her sewing on the table. Are you hungry? It's late, and I don't know when you last ate. The mention of food set his stomach growling. I could use something to eat. How long have I been here? You arrived around midday. You've missed at least 2 meals. She walked to the door and tapped on it. A man opened the door. He's awake and hungry. Could someone bring him something to eat? The man nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Ardrat completed his exercises and dried himself off, tossing the towel he used by the door when he was done. With no windows, the only means that he had of telling time was through counting his meals and sleep periods. He'd been there for several weeks now. The door opened and a young woman he'd never seen before entered. She carried a tray to the table and smiled at him. I've brought you a lunch. I hope you enjoy it. He eyed her from under lowered brows as he sat in a chair to eat. She was a pretty girl who looked to be somewhere around his own age, with the light brown hair hanging loosely around her shoulders and the same hazel eyes as the woman he'd seen when he'd first awakened in the room. Is anyone going to tell me what this is all about? Why am I being held captive? She sat on the bed and stretched, thrusting her chest out. You're being kept here for your own protection. There are people who'd kill you if they could. He snorted. Who'd want me dead? She kicked off her shoes and lifted her feet and legs onto the bed while she lay back on the pillow. Shade Dusk Rose, for one. You're a problem for her. He froze, his fork halfway in his mouth, and sat staring at her while he mulled over what he'd just said in his mind. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, and sat staring at her while he mulled what she'd just said over in his mind. Shade had told him to return to Zarl, and he'd refused. If he were a problem for her, though, then his grandfather was even more of one. His fork dropped from suddenly nerveless fingers, and he leapt to his feet. "Granddad!" "Oh, you don't need to worry about the old man." The woman stretched, her skirts sliding up her legs to expose her thighs. "He's safe enough. Is he here too?" She unbuttoned her blouse. "I don't know where he is, but he's safe." He frowned at her, rubbing the scar on his cheek. "What are you doing?" "I thought maybe I could take your mind off your worries." She opened her blouse and pulled her skirt up, exposing the curve of her hip. She wasn't wearing undergarments. The blood drained from his face, and he bolted for the door. His captors had locked it. He pounded on it. Someone opened it from the other side, and a burly man stood in the doorway. "Is everything okay here?" Adrath grabbed the man's arm and pointed at the woman on the bed. "She's trying to trap me." The woman giggled. "Everything's fine. He's just being shy. He'll get over it." A second man stepped inside and took in the situation in the room. His lips thinned as he noted Ardath's expression. He faced the woman on the bed. "Get out." She sat up and glared at him. "I'm Clan. I can do whatever I want." The man spat, sneered at her. "You ain't our Clan. You're a split skull. Master Ardath don't want you. Get out." The woman got off the bed, refastened her blouse, and readjusted her skirt, and put her shoes back on. "We'll see what Ma has to say about this. Your Ma may have helped us, but she ain't our leader and has no authority here." He addressed Ardath. "If there's anyone you don't want us to allow in the room with you, just say the word." He watched the woman leave, pausing before he followed her out the door. "You ain't a prisoner. We keeping you here for your safety. You want to come out sometime? Just let us know. If it's safe, we can let you come out. Walk around a bit and stretch your legs." Ardath nodded. "Thanks. I'd like that." These are some new names, though I still feel like it's connected to the bigger universe that you're usually working on, May. Though I think this woman be laying her danger on just a little bit thick, and by danger, I mean her feminine wiles. The next story is by Bobby Ellis. This was it. The night the world ended. Their fingers had intertwined as she snuggled up close to him. His scent filled her nose, and the warmth of him let her know that she was home. It had been a good day. They'd gone to the pumpkin patch and gotten those apple cider donuts that she loved so much. She'd made sure to find the extra sweet apples he enjoyed. 14 years they'd been together and married for 6. The pandemic had been tough. They'd both fallen into a deep depression, but who wouldn't? She'd put on some weight. A lot of weight, thanks to ice cream and pizza. He'd spent some money. A lot of money, thanks to board games they didn't need. But it didn't matter. They were still together. "I love you," she said, looking up into his blue eyes. "You're my best friend." He looked at her, silent. He put on an awkward smile and looked down at their hands. "Don't you feel the same?" she said jokingly. He let go of her hand and took a deep breath. "I'm not happy. I haven't been for a while." "What?" she said. She felt the weight drop in her stomach. "But you love me, right?" "I love you. Like a friend." This was how her world ended. This just got real very quickly. Nobody wants to be friend zoned, especially, but then, then you go through captivity together and you're like, no, I don't know about that one, Sergeant. I don't know. Sorry for your loss. The next story is by Anoni Moose. I'm sorry, I'm starting to do it with Anoni Moose. I think it just happens when there are 2 O's. Ask Mike. It just happens. It is an unfortunate muscle reaction. The moment I laid my eyes on him, my heart raced. In that very instant we first met, sparks flew, and it seemed like everything around me came crashing down, like the entire world stopped spinning as my life suddenly changed. In one single tick of that fateful clock, it was as if we spent 1,000 lifetimes together, understood each other so deeply, so perfectly, that would make the heavens above weep from the clarity between these two beings alone. It was like being trapped in a hurricane in the middle of a deep ocean whirlpool. Every word, every syllable he spoke had a direct line into my soul. Every sound his tongue made incited my spirit to resonate on a level I never thought possible. Each inflection changed me, transformed me into a being. I could not be near him. I needed his presence closer to me. With a single sentence, I understood that we were soulmates and inseparable. There was nothing that could keep us apart, no mountain that we couldn't climb, no ocean too wide for us to ford. We were in perfect harmony, and we understood each other so immaculately that it was like we spoke our own language. No matter where we were or what we were doing, our communication was pristine. Even if there was nothing but silence between us, even if a kidnapper caught us both and bound our mouths with the strongest tape, our beings were so intertwined and interconnected that we knew what each other was thinking. If that wasn't a real connection, I don't think I could ever tell what truly was. Hey, hey! Nicolas Cage's snapping fingers broke my concentration. Are you paying attention? He held up a fruit in each hand, thrusting his left arm forward. This is a peach. Then he displayed his fruit-filled right hand. This is a mango. We want the mango. Then he tossed both fruits over his shoulder and stepped over 2 separate postcards which displayed next to each other and pointed to the leftmost poster. This is the Magna Carta. And Nicolas Cage stepped over to the right postboard. This is the Declaration of Independence. We want the Declaration of Independence. Do you understand? He had such a way with words. You know, I should have expected Nick Cage, and I love that Nick Cage keeps coming, but I was still expecting it to turn into like a K-pop fangirl, to be like, and now I'm going to go and abduct the K-popian. I was not expecting Nick Cage, though. He is always a pleasant surprise. Everything he's in it turns into a masterpiece. The next story is by H.Bird. You will do this for me, the Duchess pleaded. Won't you? The physician had closed the wound in her arm, but thick red stains darkened her dress, and the sleeves hung from her in ribbons. Marcus knew that the wound would be gone before he saw her again, not even a scar to show for the ordeal. But to him, she would have looked just as beautiful even with one. It hurt that he hadn't been there to stop the assassins before they'd gotten so close. Even the Duchess's protector had to sleep sometimes, she insisted once. She trusted him with all her secrets. She cared for him. She should have just kept him closer. But now was not the time to suggest that. Marcus took her hand in his and kissed it. Of course, my lady, it will be done. Some of Venus's finest minds and most capable agents sat arrayed around the Duchess, waiting for her word, but she trusted no one else with this task. No one but him. It pains me to leave you again, Marcus told her, but when I return, you will know that you are safe. She couldn't show him any emotion as he departed, not in front of the others, but he knew that it was there, in those glittering eyes. Lewin would keep her safe for now. A ducal guard escort around the clock. Soldiers patrolling every inch of the aerostat. The city was in his domain, his responsibility. Marcus had to trust that the spy master would handle it. Slowly, Marcus's ship slipped from its dock. The dangling towers receded from view, their gleam slipping behind the pale gold of the clouds. The first lead the spy master had given him took Marcus lower, deeper. In the level where the Guildster's vessels flew, a simple heat suit was all that it took to get him aboard. From there, entrance was trivial. The interior security measures were even worse. They just weren't up to this. The Guilders should have known better than to challenge the Duchess. Still, Marcus knew that everyone wanted more than they had. Maybe they thought that joining this plot was their chance to get it. By taking that, by taking what was hers. But things wouldn't turn out that way. Marcus had wanted to confront the Guilders, to let them know as he killed them that it was he who had done it. He was the Duchess's vengeance. He wanted to carve their flesh like they'd done to hers, but Loon had been clear. The whole vessel had to go. Too many targets to handle them all personally. Marcus sabotaged the engines and detonated the stabilizer, letting the ship and all aboard it fall to the surface, oblivious to the cause. Next, the spy master directed him to the Silver Tower, that thin line rising from the peaks at Ovda all the way beyond the blue. It was as much a space elevator as an arcology, meant to break the shipping monopoly of the gate, and it had. Marcus struggled to imagine what the Silver Lords could have possibly gained from attacking the Duchess that they didn't already have. But perhaps he would get to ask them. Neither assassin had survived, Lewin had told him, nor had the Guildsters, of course. But here there were plenty of conspirators to interrogate. A storm in the third cloud layer was all the cover that Marcus's ship needed. A maintenance hatch, an overridden freight elevator or two, and he was sulking through the gleaming halls of the upper tower. The dockmaster was his first target, the man who had gotten the assassins on board of the guild ship. He seemed to know little and resist much. Marcus slashed the man's throat and let him fall to the surface. He couldn't afford the delay. Further above, he found Lord Aberdeen, another of Lewin's targets. The man gave few answers, mostly what they already knew, but he delivered them so smugly that Marcus couldn't help himself from silencing the man. He seemed so proud of what he'd done, of how much damage they'd caused, even with their plan coming up just short. "We really carved her, don't you think?" he'd asked. "Put on a great show." Marcus hadn't been able to stop himself from returning the favor, painting half of the Lord's chambers in red, letting him scream for a bit as he crawled. Marcus had to steady his shaking on the last elevator up, remind himself of his purpose. That outburst hadn't been him simply avenging a failure of his duty. He was more than just the Duchess's protector, and he meant more to her than just this role, even if they could never admit it publicly. She shared more than just secrets with him, and these filth had almost taken her from him. He wanted to tear them apart, leave nothing but bloodstains, but today he knew he had to be more than simple fury. The Duchess had given him a task. The final target, Lord Sterling, proved to be as stubborn as he imagined that a Silver Lord ought to have been. But in his indignation, the man gave enough away to reveal where the information was hidden. Marcus stunned the man first, giving himself a moment alone with the conspirators' records. Lewin told him as he left the tower that there was just one more target, north, at Ishtar. Marcus knew that there were three. He wanted more than anything to race back to the Duchess's side and kill the last of them, Lewin. But the spy master would detect his ship's premature return. The second target was close to the first, the one that Lewin had given him. Marcus could handle them both together, keep Lewin on comms, and trust that spy master would continue as he had been, advising, monitoring, not knowing that he had been discovered. It took everything that Marcus had to make himself continue on to Ishtar, but anything else would have put the Duchess's life in danger. Marcus landed in the polar twilight, stalking through the tunnels to reach the corporate complex. They checked for weapons, but didn't catch his. He found the last of Lewin's targets waiting in her office, lit by surface windows that watched the perpetual sunset. He shot her, even through the woman's quick words of protest. They didn't matter anymore. Marcus knew everything. The spy master had arranged the attack against the Duchess in order to reshape politics on Venus to his own liking. Any rival of the city would be forced to show their hand by joining in the plot, exposing themselves to retribution when their false assassination failed. And he had the Duchess's protector silencing his loose ends. Worse, Lewin meant to use the event to saddle the Duchess with his own agent, a noble marriage he would call it, joining her suitor's forces to her own for the protection of their combined strength. After all, her life was in danger now. She couldn't refuse. If the plan had been seen through, Marcus doubted that the Duchess would have survived a year, and then her grieving widower would have been left with everything that had once been hers. Marcus found the would-be suitor waiting in the mines beneath Ishtar, hidden in a room that wasn't supposed to exist. "I know," he said simply as he stepped through the door that none should have been able to find. The man turned to run, The man who would have taken everything. But you can't outrun electricity. Marcus raised a hand toward him. Power flowed from the capacitors hidden in his clothes, up his sleeve and out. The lasers traced the path, charging the ions in the air, paving an invisible road for the lightning to follow. The flash came an instant later. Then the room was entirely still, save for the waft of steam and smoke rising from the charred hole in the man's back. Lewin sounded pleased to hear that their final target had been dealt with. Marcus let him believe that all was well, docking through golden haze, hurrying back to the palace as quickly as he could without arousing suspicion. He found the spy master sitting with the Duchess in her garden, too close to her to stun him safely. "Get away from her," Marcus snarled, holding out his hand. He put himself between Lewin and the Duchess. She trusted her protector enough to get behind him. Still, she asked, "What is this?" "He was going to use an attack against you to force a marriage, and then—" "Yes," the Duchess interjected. "That's what this was all for." Marcus didn't recognize her tone. She knew? No, it didn't make sense. She had always told him that she would never marry, that she didn't need to. That's why the ducal protector was free to share her bed. She wouldn't marry. She loved him. Didn't she? "Marcus," the Duchess demanded, "what did you do?" "Marcus, I feel like you misinterpreted some signs in a big way." But also, this was very well done, with the tension, with the interpretation, with the leading, with the perspective of the character, the narrative flow, it did a lot in a little bit of time. That was very, very clear. Excellent job, H.Bird. Thank you for submitting. The next story is by Egao Chan, called Fleeting Guest from the Stars. Shiny, even glowing in focused eyes. Shiny, sexy edges on his face, with some tiny protrusions that made him less human. But it was expected, for this was surely a visitor from beyond the stars. Ada could only take one look at her visitor before having to turn her face away, blushed and nervous, her heart racing, and she could not keep her breathing down. This must be the visitor from outer space. There was no other explanation. Otherwise, how would he appear right on her window like this? Though it was only one look, it was clear that the visitor was looking intensely at her. His strangely shaped mouth moved. She could not hear anything. But it must be some kind of greeting in an extraterrestrial language, right? No, Mr. Alien, I cannot go with you." Ada put her hands on her burning cheeks. I'm honored that you would invite me to your planet, but I have a life here, you know? She raised her face to take another look at her visitor, just in time to see her visitor raising both hands at her. Ada squealed and tumbled into the bathroom. What was that? They only just met and he was already about to hug her? What was this? And what was next? Did he come here to court her? Did he come here from outer space just to make her his bride? All the stories that she'd read, it was coming true. Her face was burning and she immediately splashed water on herself to cool down. The door to Ada's room opened. Footsteps came in and went. When she finally came out of the bathroom, a formal and polite rejection speech ready, the visitor was gone. He must have detected her rejection already. It made sense. He was from outer space. Telepathy would be just a natural gift for a race of beings like him. Ada could not help but feel a sense of loss, even though she did not have any real feelings for him, and she was nowhere near qualified to be an interstellar bride and bridge the communication between planets. She would still like to thank him. With this slightly weighted feeling on her mind, she wandered out of the room, just in time to bump into her mother and her mother's friend, Auntie Wong. "Ada, long time no see." Auntie Wong was happy to see her. "Auntie," Ada hugged the auntie. "Auntie Wong's brought something special for you today." Ada's mother smiled. "What is it?" "I'm surprised you don't know. One of them was in your room earlier. Now, all of them are in the kitchen. I guess you didn't see because you were in the bathroom." Before her mother could finish, Ada rushed straight into the kitchen. She saw a giant streamer. Inside were 6 visitors, just like the one that she saw, but instead of charming blue-green skin, they were all red and sweaty. "Blue crabs? They're the best wild-catch blue crabs." "Blue crabs? They're the best wild-caught blue crabs that I've ever seen. You're in for an umami treat today." Auntie Wong's excited tone came from behind. Ada. Ada. I think you gotta put down the Ice Planet Barbarians. Because you looked at a crab and thought that he came to make you his bride. Ada. Also, love it, Egao. Love it. It's also kind of funny because I think you said you write more seriously, generally, but your short stories are often comedic. The final story of today is by duduknox. Gray or green? I wasn't sure. She sat 6 feet across the table, her laughter livening the entire conference room. She joked about borrowing office stationery from her colleagues. My ears ignored the joke as I struggled to solve the mesmerizing mystery in front of my eyes. Are her eyes gray or green? She was beautiful, blonde, and busty. Alicia's pretty, Ryan had opined, but she has a face of a horse. I wasn't amused by the equine equivalence. She was nice. That's all that mattered. I shook myself out of my daydream before I was accused of harassing women with my penetrating gaze. I got back to my cubicle and sat in front of my blank laptop screen. I stood up to look across the barrier. Alicia wasn't there. I returned to staring at my screen. Alicia liked me. She squeezed my arm gently when I brought her coffee. We'd argued for hours about Khaleesi. I saw it coming in season 2. She was always a megalomaniac. I roared as she defended the queen of superfluous epithets. While we differed on Khaleesi, we were united on our love for Spider-Man. Work took a back seat when she was within a 10-foot radius. I was glad my boss hadn't seen me slacking off. She's a good woman. I dreamt about our children to be born in the near future. I wondered how an amazing woman like Alicia could have been dumped. If you like her, ask her out. Stop playing the waiting game. Bianca scolded me over a cup of coffee. It's been 8 months since she broke up. She'll be back on the market soon. Back on the market? That's a strange way to refer to a human being, I wondered to myself. I will, when I'm ready, I responded. Suit yourself, dumbass. Don't come crying to me when she's dating someone else. Bianca's words hurt. It planted the seeds of doubt in my mind. I'm slim, mildly attractive, and a puny guy. She'll go out with you. I convinced my reflection in the mirror. Feelings can't be forced. You can win a woman over with kindness and patience. Give her time. My composure returned with these wise words that my mother told me a few years ago. 2 months later, I was ready to ask her out. I waited one evening after everyone had left work. We were the only ones on the floor. I mustered up the courage to walk over to her. Hey, Alicia. I looked into her green eyes as she turned around. Yeah? Do you want to go to dinner with me on Friday? I have a reservation for 2 at Toscano's. I know it's your favorite restaurant. I smiled with hope, relieved that I had avoided stammering. Oh, sorry, VJ. That's sweet of you, but you're not my type. She squeezed my arm and went back to reading her emails. I'm sorry, VJ. You finally got the courage up to do it. And it did not work. At least, it could have been worse. At least she still seems nice. Even if she goes, not my thing. At least she was still nice. But also, this got too real again. I guess we're ending on the real story. on another realism. With that said, everybody who has read today, if they sent in somewhere to look for more of their content or to find them on social media, you'll find it in the description. Let me know what your favorite story was today down in the comments below. Thank you to everybody for submitting, and thank you everybody for watching. The next LMIAY prompt is up. With that said, have a great week, and don't die.